Hello and welcome to the agenda on Labour Social with me, Graham Hughes, and Phil Morehouse. Hello, Phil. How you doing? How you feeling this
Hello.
morning?
I'm feeling very well. I'm going to have Chinese tonight.
Well, what's helping pay for that Chinese, Phil?
So when everyone else was convinced that the Lib Dems and Labour were knocking each other out for Mid Bedfordshire, I looked at the bookies odds and went, nah, Labour are winning this. So I put a large bet on and have a large amount of money.
Did you bet on
So
both of them, or just the one?
no, there was no point. Tamworth had really short odds at like 1-5, no point. And I couldn't do like a multiples because like they wouldn't let me. I
Yeah,
tried to, but it wouldn't let me. So it was like,
this is
well, there's
brilliant.
no point
This
in
is
putting
so
money on
good.
that. You get nothing. So there it
So,
is.
for those of you who are not all caught up, what's happening in the news? There was the Mid Bedfordshire and Tamworth by-elections caused by the resignations of Nadine Dorries and Chris Pincher to ne'er-do-wells in the Tory
I mean,
party.
Chris Pincher didn't have a great deal of choice in the matter, really, but yeah,
No, he didn't. He was trying to fight it for a long time, though, wasn't he? And
yeah,
the
but
Chris Pincher affair is what eventually toppled Boris Johnson, because Boris
yeah,
Johnson vouched for him,
ultimately,
knowing that he was a wrong one. Just a
yeah.
shout out to Katie there for the super chat. Well done, Labour. Today is a good day. Indeed, Katie. Today is a good day. So, what the by-election results are absolutely devastating for the Tory party. I saw a Tory party pundit, I think his name was Andrew Bowie or something, on
Oh yeah,
Sky News, and he was like, "No, people. This shows that people support what we're doing. They just didn't want
yeah.
to.
Well,
They just didn't want to vote
he's a
for us."
minister. He's a
Is
minister.
he? Bloody hell!
What is he
Uh,
minister for?
we've got a
Let's have a
message
look.
from John Hart. Thank you very much for the super chat, John. Can we please spare a thought for Owen Jones, Novara Media, Double Down News, and Phil McCracken on this very sad day for them? Which is, yeah, I mean, someone said in the because I mentioned this earlier in the morning brew, and someone said in the comments, "Oh, why are you having a go at Owen Jones? He never supports the Tories," and I'm like, he really does
What?
support the Tories by slagging off Labour all the time. And apparently, Phil, we don't slag off Labour enough, so we need to do that more.
All right then. Yeah, we'll slag off Labour enough. Why the hell didn't they win by 2,000 votes? I mean,
Yeah.
1,000 odd. That's pathetic, really, isn't it? There's like two of the safest seats, two of the largest majorities that the Tories won in 2019. How can they only overturn that with 1,000 odd votes? It's
I know,
ridiculous.
it's terrible. You know what? If Starmer was a decent leader, he'd be 20 points ahead in the polls by now.
Someone has pointed out, though, but you can't have everything. But someone has pointed out. So obviously, Starmer's got the leadership and the organisational skills, but he's not an orator. He's not a big fiery orator. He hasn't got that charisma. And someone was wondering, bloody hell, could you imagine where Labour would be if they had like the trifactor? If they had a leader who had everything?
Oh wow.
But you can't hope for that. You'll have
Yeah.
some leaders who will have a combination of them. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, the thing is,
He's,
like,
he's not particularly charismatic,
no,
Starmer, but do you know what? I don't care. And this is the point that I keep trying to make to people who are like, oh, they should be doing this, they should be doing that. I'm just like, I don't care. I just want the Tories out of office. I'm
yeah.
not going to survive another 5 years of this shit from the Tories. I'm
Uh,
just not. I know other people who aren't going to survive
and we,
it.
we
So,
don't. We know there's some people not going to survive, like, because we don't know when the election will now be. I don't know whether this brings the election forward or puts it back, because it all depends on how they react. And I'm seeing, obviously, various correspondents are revealing what their Tory MP sources think about it, but we don't know what the balance of opinion is or what
mm,
they'd want to do about it, because there's no good option for them. There are some talking about, oh, the letters will be going in now. Yeah, but a confidence vote doesn't help the party, because all it does is weaken Sunak without getting rid of him. And let's say they do get rid of him. Okay, so first of all, you look proper clowns, because then you'll be like, instead of focusing on the country's problems, you focus on yourselves again. They're gonna have another big argument. They're all gonna say how shit the country is under the Tories again. And who they're gonna get that's better? Like, it's just a sad fact of the situation. The Parliamentary Party doesn't actually have anyone better than Sunak. So if they even have a confidence vote, even if Sunak wins it, they just harm themselves. So that would be a stupid thing to do. They might do it because they only need 53 idiots to do it. But that would be a stupid thing to do. So what else can they do? They can try at the moment. What I think's happening is, instead of, what they need to do is listen to voters. Like that person you mentioned, Andrew Bowitt, who is, I don't even know, is the Under Secretary of State for Nuclear and Networks, whatever the hell that means. I think that means he's the person in charge of stopping Russian subs knackering undersea like internet cables or
Submarine
something.
cables, yeah.
But the but he was saying, oh, this shows that actually the public are supporting us.
No.
So even saying that, it's not just that it's a
What?
really stupid thing to say. Even saying it, if you're a voter and you've gone, right, well, actually, I voted for Conservatives for the last 10 years, but at the local elections this year, I voted against them to send you a message. Then let's say you lived in Tamworth or Mid Bedfordshire and you did the same thing. Or if you didn't live in those areas and you would have done the same thing, I'm sending you a message. You then listen to a member of the government say, oh, this shows the voter supporters. I would be livid, absolutely livid. This is like the worst thing to say. Even if you don't intend to change anything, you at least need a show of humility. I mean, what have Labour been doing over the last 3 years? They've been basically saying, even where they haven't messed up, they've been saying, we have completely messed up. We've failed to listen to the public. They've just said that, whether it's been true or not. In some areas, it has been true, in some it hasn't. But they've said it anyway, because it's way easier to get voters to change their vote to you. Like if you're looking at these 2019 voters who either abandoned Labour or voted Conservative or whatever, it's way easier to get them on your side by saying, we didn't listen to you, now we are, than it is to say, you made the wrong decision. How's that working out for you?
You chose poorly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a load of super chats flooding in. Thank you very much for the super chat. I think everyone's quite jubilant today. We've got a Brian saying a pint for Graham and a Vimto for Phil. You're on the Vimto, mate. Sorry.
All right.
You're not getting any boost tonight. We've got Ryan Brown, £5 super chat. Thank you. There might be a red weather warning down in Westminster later this week. That's from Ryan, indeed. And we've got Johnny Copperhead with the super chat saying, what a typically graceless lump the Tamworth Blue Boy was. Sulk, hump, riffs off Rosette and storms off the stage.
So let me tell you what happened here then, because you haven't heard about this, have you?
No, you were about to tell me before we started. I'm like, no, we've got to start.
I had gone to sleep, but then I just woke up, and at that point it was like looking interesting. So I was basically awake until both results were in. So this graceless lump, Andrew Cooper. So first of all, obviously, when the count's done and the results are in, they get the stage up and all the candidates go up, and then the results are read out by the returning officer. Then, shake hands, congratulations to the winner, they make a speech. And it doesn't go on too long, it's fine. So, but obviously the candidates sort of know who's going to win who's won at that point, because, you've gone round the area, you can see the piles of Labour, Conservative and so on. So people have got an inkling who's won, they just don't know the exact figures. So it's delayed. All the candidates are together at Tamworth, but there's a delay in announcing the results because this lump is nowhere to be seen. He's sulking somewhere. So they have to find him to get all the candidates together. When he does come in, he hasn't got his rosette on anymore. So he's obviously chucked that in the bin in a fit of pique. Then they get assembled on there. The returning officer reads out the results. And as soon as the results are read out, like if you look at Mid Bedfordshire, the Tory candidate there shakes the Labour candidate's hand, all very graceful. As you would, that's what you're supposed to do.
Gracious.
But this guy in Tamworth, he just then, as soon as the numbers have come out, he's off, he's gone. He's looking around, noisily gets off stage, no shaking of hands, no congratulations, just pisses off, takes his own advice, F's off, and storms out the hall altogether, which was incredibly petulant, really.
Big thank you to GHK for the £2 super chat. Tory staring into the abyss. Let's push him in. And we've got one angry pagan with £10 super chat. Thank you. Love waking up to Labour wins. Both Owen Jones and Ian Dale huffing their copium by saying this is purely anti-Tory vote. Lol, 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 lol. Now, I addressed this a little bit in morning brew, but it's not just an anti-Tory vote, because that's not enough. If an anti-Tory vote was enough, Labour would have won the general election in 2017. In fact, it
Yeah.
might have won the general election in 2019, because there were
Yeah.
enough people who were dissatisfied with what the Tories were doing. Over 50% of the population then thought Brexit was a bad idea, and over 50% of the electorate vote for parties that promised a second referendum. Now, if
Yeah.
they had managed to get themselves together and
Yeah,
most
exactly.
of them vote
If
for
we could have
Labour,
marshaled those votes
yes.
around the ones who could win, like is happening now, then yes, it would have been a very different set of results.
Oh, wow. Business Cat just dropped in £30. Thank you very much, Business Cat. £1 for each Tory MP left after the next election. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Business Cat. That's the thing. This has been extrapolated. I know it's not going to work exactly
No.
like this, but it's been extrapolated out.
Yeah.
And I've seen, honestly, I've seen ones where it's under 30 seats for the
Yeah.
Tories based on this result. I've seen one where it's less than 10 seats in the whole country.
I think that would be someone having a very big laugh. But you know, if these results were I mean, they wouldn't be. You can't get these swings because obviously in a by-election, first of all, you do have a lot of people staying at home who will turn up and
Tory
vote
voters,
Tory.
yeah.
But although that being said, when they're saying, "Oh, it's basically all the Tory voters staying home," well, Survation have done some polling on this, and actually, that's not quite true at all. They found that about 52% of 2019 Conservative voters turned out, 58% of Labour ones, 54% of Lib Dems. So it's a little bit behind in terms of Conservative ones turning out, but not like well behind,
Yeah.
according to their polling.
So
And
there's not
actually, their
enough.
polling stood up quite well because their polling that came out last month for this by-election was actually pretty close to the actual result.
Yeah.
So Survation have done themselves some favours with this one. But even given, yeah, I mean, no one's suggesting that Labour are going to retain Mid Bedfordshire at the general election. Like, it's far too safe. There are going to be enough Tories come out at that point. And of course, with it being a by-election, they could throw the kitchen sink at it. They're only fighting 2 seats at this time.
Yeah.
So I mean, everyone was out. Oh, they had like, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, all sorts, loads of Labour MPs were descending on both seats over the last few days. You can't do that in a general election because you're fighting like they'll be aiming to get like 400 odd. They'll be, banging on the doors around 450 all on the same day. So you can't do that for a general election. So there's all sorts of reasons why it wouldn't. Why, yeah, Mid Bedfordshire's safe, but that doesn't matter because there's loads of Tory MPs. Most Tory MPs, the vast majority of them, are looking at their majority thinking, "Well, mine's way smaller than that."
Yeah.
But where they're getting everything wrong, the Tories, is they fundamentally don't know what to do. I keep making this point. The vast majority of Tory MPs have never really had a proper fight in an election because the vast majority of them, I'm going to have to recalculate how many it is now before the election, but the vast majority of them won their seats for the first time in 2010 or more recently, which means that they've become MPs straight into government at a time where Labour weren't challenging them. So they're getting to a situation now for the first time, the absolute first time in their lives, and this is for like a good 75-80% of them, I think it is, where this is the first time they've ever encountered this sort of resistance, and they don't know what to do about it. You've got according to leaks, there's Tory WhatsApp groups where some Tory MPs, particularly the less experienced ones, they're all believing this copium that, oh, it was just loads of Conservative voters who couldn't be asked, but they'll come out for the general election and will still win. There's I don't know how many, but there's some that think that. And the other
But we
problem
want
is
them to think that, don't we? I mean, so who's in charge of the Tory campaign?
Greg Hans.
Greg Hands across America, and he's been running around with his piece of paper.
Yeah, I don't like to criticise him too much because he seems to be one of the few Tory MPs that's actually putting the hard yards in. He actually gets out and about campaigning.
Yeah, and he's also
Unlike most of the
terrible.
rest of them. He is very bad, yes. He's absolutely awful. Dreadful.
But that's why I want him to stay where he is. Happy has dropped at £10 the Super Chat Fund. Happy day. The GE can't come soon enough. Thank you. And Helen Wilkes has put £3 in. Thank you very much, Helen. But yeah, I mean, Greg Hands, do you think he's going to be out of a job? Do you think they're going to get
I
rid of
don't
him,
know. I mean,
blame
he
him
should have
for it.
gone after the local elections because it's not just that they did worse than expected. It was a very badly run campaign. But then I always think, to be fair to Greg Hans, he gets no help. Like I've just said, so many Labour MPs were going campaigning in Tamworth and Mid Bedfordshire the last few days, and indeed over the last few weeks. But they really descended on it in the last few days. Where were the Tory MPs? You can understand James Cleverly is doing a bit of jet setting at the moment, with a problem in the Middle East again. Where was Swella Braverman? Where was Kemi Badnock? Where was Penny Mordaunt? Where were the people who are considered to be the favourites to take over from Rishi Sunak? Where's their shift? Where
Yeah.
were they? Where
Well,
were the
nowhere to be
members of the
seen.
cabinet? You know,
Well, I mean, if you're that way inclined and you see a disaster unfolding on the horizon, you're not going to run towards it, are you?
well, James Cleverly and Rishi Sunak did. They've gone straight to the Middle East. So,
Well, that's what I mean. No, but
but
they've run into a war zone rather than deal with the issues that we're
yeah,
facing back home. They have chosen to go to a war zone in which they can't really have any sway whatsoever. So they're going to go into a room on
uh,
3,000 miles away that no one's going to listen to. Where no
I'm
one's going to
just
listen to them.
I'm just going to put out this comment here. It says if Alistair Stratham, who's the now going to be the MP for Mid Bedfordshire for Labour, if he can prove himself an effective MP for his constituents, he might endear himself to enough voters to the point he can retain the seat. I would say no. He'll obviously try, but no. Two reasons. First of all, it's a really safe seat. Second of all, the local council are, by all accounts, batshit crazy.
Oh, I heard
So
about this. The local council head of the local council is just he's not on the level, is
I
he?
mean, as it was, the
So to speak.
Tories candidates, what was his name again? I can't remember these candidates. Festus Akinbasoya, he was going to be on
That's a great
a
name, though.
collision course with them
I've
as
got to say,
well.
Festus Akinbase Sawyer is a great name.
But he was on a collision course with them because he's like the council have been doing a bit of building on the green belt, which is fine because Labour have got a bit of a policy of that anyway. So that there's no going to be friction there. Whereas he's more of a NIMBYist. So he was against that. So he was already going to be having arguments with them. So what's a Labour MP going to be like with a batshit and I don't just mean a Conservative council. I mean, sometimes you can work with them, right? But with a batshit one as you head towards an election where everything's going to get very, very party political.
Yeah, it's not great, is it?
So I don't give him any chance at all, realistically. By all means, he needs to knock him. He needs to put a shift in.
Yeah, if he
But
knocks on doors every day from now to the general election, so everyone feels like they know him. Because one of the things with Nadine Dorries is the
yeah,
big criticism coming from Tory voters in Mid-Beds was that she was never there.
yeah,
And they never got to speak to her. And she would say, "Oh no, I'm there. My team is there," which isn't her. I don't think
no,
she understood that her daughters,
no.
who she paid taxpayers' money to do it, to run her office, weren't actually her because she's a bit thick. I don't know if she could.
Well, there's a lot of Tory MPs that don't really do their own constituency work.
Yes, yeah. There's a part in the process of a child growing up in which they understand that when something is removed from their field of vision, it still exists. And I think that she
Yeah,
hasn't got that yet.
yeah.
Just working on it. Johnny Copperhead, thank you very much for the £10 super chat, mate. Just started strumming some Steve Earle on my homemade cigar box guitar. Haven't done that since Selby and Ainsty. Yeah, indeed. Well, more to come. We've got another 2 by-elections coming up for Blackpool
Yes.
South and Wellingborough.
Yeah.
Eurosh, €10 super chat. Thank you very much for the euros. We always like euros on this show. Won't someone think about the poor Tory MPs? What will they do without their safe seat nests? They'll be out on the street. We can only...
Well, some of them might be. Some of them are unemployable. They'd better have swindled a load of money, which we will then have to recover.
Yeah. And also, just to jump into the chat, Peter M has made a point. I was making a video about this before we started. I'll try and get it out this afternoon. Do you think that the Dr. Death moniker for Sunak for his Eat Out to Help Out scheme will gain traction before the election? Will it damage him personally? I say yes and yes, and I think that this is something that we have to call him now every time we refer to him.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a
Like
little
crooked.
shot on it myself. So at the moment, the problem is like this is out in the news now, but it's not in the news. because we've got other things, not even just the by-elections. But the Tories can't hope that there's going to be a new war every 2 months. So there's going to be a period where the news sort of is scratching around and sort of has to report on the COVID inquiry. But what I would say is this: if you look at what's coming out of the COVID inquiry, it's like really damning of Boris Johnson, but he's sort of out of the loop. Now, from Labour's point of view, they therefore will be gravitating towards everything that's damaging about Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
So I think Labour will push the doctor death thing.
Yeah, I hope they do.
It's actually quite awkward because the person who called him that, Angela McLean, is now
The scientific advisor.
the chief scientific advisor. So
Yeah,
she
to the
is
government.
Rishi Sunak's chief scientific advisor. Um,
Awkward.
yeah, exactly. So, but Labour, I think, will push that one because they need, the stuff that's on Boris Johnson. People, it's like he's gone. So they need to focus on the stuff that's very much Rishi Sunak.
So we've got a message from One Angry Pagan with a super chat attached. Thank you very much. More crap about Labour won't nationalise anything. Would either of you want to take on that argument again?
I mean,
what I would just quickly say about the trains, LNER and TransPennine Express and a few others are now nationalised. They're run as a quango by the government, effectively. I think what Labour are going to do and what they've signalled their intention to do is, as these contracts run out with Avanti West Coast, etc., and GWR, they will take on the franchise until you get to a point where the government runs all of them. They're also going to be pushing for more deregulation in cities around the country that was already seen in public transport in
regulation.
Manchester and also in Liverpool, which is coming up soon. I think Liverpool's probably going to do that next year under Steve Rotherham. So that I see that as part of Labour's agenda in that respect. Phil, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
So they've explicitly said that they are taking all of the rail companies into public hands as soon as their contracts are up. What I would say, in terms of the policies that they're not explicitly saying but are quite clear, they are going to increase in order to try and get them to give up, because why have we got several train companies in public hands at the moment? It's not because the Tories want them in public hands. It's because they basically dropped their franchises because they couldn't, they were messing it up. So I think Labour will also tighten up regulations, stop them cancelling services left, right and centre. In fact, Louise Haig's talked about her irritation at that. In fact, she, just like me, got caught out with a cancelled service when she was trying to get back from Liverpool. And that is more likely to cause some of these contracts to like fail before their time. So I think it'll happen more quickly than you might imagine. Then you look at other sectors. So the water companies, I've talked before about the various policies we've got there. Their policies will make life very uncomfortable for water companies. So I can see some of those being taken into public hands as a result of the fact they'll be told, you can't do this, you can't do that, stop being a dickhead. And then they'll decide, well, actually, if we can't be dickheads, we can't make money. So,
Well,
so
Steve's retro loft in the chat there is saying Ofwat could do with having the power to control water companies rather than nationalising initially. Which I think
there's so many policies for water companies that are going to be in the manifesto, and there's no suggestion that anything's been changed with this year's National Policy Forum. So I think it's going to make life incredible. Basically, the way to nationalize is to basically take them into public hands without buying them out, because that's a non-starter. Because what happens is you get into massive debt and you don't see any benefits. You nationalize these companies, you will see no benefit to the consumer for 10, 15, 20 years. In the meantime, there's that debt pile that the Tories will say, well done, they've just put up the taxes of you, your children, your grandchildren now. So you have to do it on the cheap, and this is how you do it on the cheap. As for energy, I mean, we've got the Great British Energy. It's a start. Again, we'll just have to see how that goes. But, they're doing it in the only way possible. Like, people just say, oh, you need to nationalize if it's flicking a switch. It's not. There's only two ways. That is, first of all, you persuade these companies to give up their franchises for not much money. In other words, by regulating and squeezing them a bit. Or you buy them out where you'll be paying loads of money, and then you've paid loads of money. You've now got to work out how to pay off that debt. You ain't got time to be reducing bills and things like that overnight. It'll take forever. So when people just say, oh, nationalize as if you just flick a switch. No, that's how you lose the next election. And then the Tories just sell them back off cheap to their mates, and the debt pile's still there. And they will just,
Yeah.
they'll not do anything about it. They'll just say, well, that's Labour's debt pile. That's their debt pile of shame.
Yeah.
So you've got to be realistic about it. So
Well, I
actually,
think that's one of the big things with Labour, isn't it? They've got to be realistic, and
they need to understand the
with the
consequences.
tools you've got.
What you don't need, and too many in Labour would want to support, is the socialist equivalent of Liz Truss. That will never work. That will never work.
That's a good way of putting it, actually. Unfortunately. Because, I mean, look, cards on the table, I would like all of this stuff to be nationalised, and I'd like it to happen overnight. But we have to look at this in a grown-up way and go, how can we actually do this in a country that is deeply conservative? We either live in a democratic country and we understand that the majority of people in this country are deeply conservative. They just are. And we deal with that. Or we live in some kind of cloud-based utopia that doesn't exist in the real world at all.
Yeah.
And the question is, for Labour, do they want to be a party of protest, or do they want to be a party of power? And Keir Starmer and his mates have made it very clear that they want to be a party of power.
There are plenty of protest groups. You can join as many protest groups as you like. That's fine. They exist. They exist for everything. So there's probably a protest group against Conkers somewhere. So you can join protest groups, whatever you like. But the purpose of the Labour Party is to form power.
There'll be loads of Conkers out after today, won't there? After this bloody storm. How's it near where you are?
It's not too bad here. I mean, the side of the house looks like the Tasmanian devil's been down it. The bins were all over the place, but that's about it. We haven't managed to kill anyone around here yet.
The bin men in Scotland. The bin men broke the top off our recycling bin last week, our wheelie bin. Oh. It's going to be full of water. Oh, my God. Oh. Anyway, Frank is in the super chat. Thank you very much. And now there are pre-cancellations, I think, talking about the trains. We've got one angry pagan with the super chat saying, much prefer hopium over copium. That's very good. We got Darren saying, Welsh Water hit the headlines due to excess sewage. Are they highlighting this as it's publicly run and ignoring the rest? Thank you very much for the super chat there, Darren. And we've also got GHK with £5 saying water company execs will be pooping their pants under Labour rather than sending it into our rivers.
They'll just go somewhere else. They'll just, as soon as they decide they're not going to be able to make money, they'll just go somewhere else.
Well, the big thing that Labour need to do when they get in, as far as I'm concerned, with water companies, they need to clamp down on borrowing. These companies have borrowed billions of pounds against their companies, and it's the people paying their water fees who are having to water rates, who are having to pay off their insane amount of debt, which didn't exist before it was privatized.
Yeah.
There's no debt whatsoever.
But they're now talking about getting everyone to pay like a one-off fee for nothing. Like it'll be on the bill as to prop up failed capitalism. It's like, no, you don't. If your local greengrocer's going to go under, if a normal private business is going to go under, it goes under. Like if you're a local shop, like Woolworths went under, Woolworths just went under. The government obviously wants to try and minimize job loss or something like that.
CNA.
But it doesn't charge everyone a tax to keep it going. It doesn't say, one-off payment of 50 quid so that we can keep Woolworths on the high street.
Yeah.
So it's utterly ridiculous. Now, what you do, obviously you can't let a public utility fail, but the solution is to say, you can't run it. You can't run it using a capitalist model. Right. We'll take it into public hands then.
Yeah.
Because you failed. You said that privatization was going to do all these things. It hasn't done these things. And even without the investment that was promised, if it still can't even manage to run itself when it basically does nothing, then no, it's the model has failed. You bring it into public hands. When it was in public hands, it worked, it was fine, and it wasn't expensive.
Yeah. Crap Ghost says profit caps could solve a lot of problems, which I agree with. But also the idea that you're running a necessity like water, a public good like water, something that society cannot function without, and you're running that to make shareholders a profit rather than for the betterment of society it's ridiculous. It's obscene, to be honest with you. It's absolutely disgraceful. And it's not like we have a choice. It's not like they go, oh well,
No,
you've
right.
got privatized. We've got Northumbria Water up here, whatever it's called. You've got Yorkshire Water, I guess, where you are, and in Liverpool it's United Utilities. You don't get any choice.
No, no,
Uh,
not at all.
and Bad Bones, thank you very much for your first super chat. Really appreciate that. Any chance of a push for PR second term? It might not currently be a massive issue on people's minds, but it's absolutely necessary. Cheers, fellas.
That is the aim, yes, to push for the second manifesto.
So the idea is that they're probably not going to have it in this manifesto,
Oh,
just
certainly
because
not. No.
it's not what people are talking about on the doorsteps. That's what I was told at
Well, no,
Labour conference.
even that doesn't work for me, because if people aren't bothered about it, actually, this next election is the ideal time to put it in, because it's not going to cost you votes. But there's a fear that it will. That's the problem. That's what we've got to tackle. The fear within the Labour leadership that it might be a divisive issue that distracts from other things. So, we need to make it clear that actually, no, either people support this or they're neutral to it. But the bottom line is fundamentally this: if you stay with first past the post, the Tories are going to come back in, and they are going to be taken over again by a narrow interest cult, because they're not going away, they're staying there. And when that happens, everything that you have done, all your reforms, are going to disappear. Keir Starmer has still got a few good years left in him. No matter what he puts in place, no matter, when he retires from politics and can think, all right, I've done a good job there, he can then spend the rest of it, he can spend his retirement watching the Tories dismantle it bit by bit.
Yeah.
If he doesn't bring in PR, that it would be my argument to him.
Yeah.
If he doesn't bring in PR, he can watch it all get torn down, because nothing he's going to build. But there's nothing like the Tories have brought things in that he can't repair, because you can destroy things that can't be repaired easily, but you cannot build anything that can't be knocked down in a day.
Yeah, by the Tories.
Mm.
And it's the sort of thing they would do.
Yes.
Because they don't know how to build anything. They just know how to destroy.
Yeah.
That's to take something that's, working okay, maybe not perfectly, but working okay, and they destroy it.
Yeah, they're just
And then they go,
smashing
we've got
piggy
no money.
banks. Yeah, they're just going around the country smashing piggy banks and taking the coins.
Yeah,
that's all it's about.
And I did the video yesterday. Oh, thank you very much to Johnny Copperhead. Crap joke alert. Thank you very much for the super chat. Why have you got L and R on your boots so I can get them the right way around? That explains why wife has C and A on her knickers. That's a terrible joke, Johnny, and you should be ashamed of yourself. But thank you very much for the super chat. I was going to say about justice. So yesterday, obviously, with Sidney Powell turning to state's evidence, so she's going to be basically testifying against Trump in this upcoming trial in Georgia, which is going to be interesting. And also, it's a state trial. It's not a federal trial. So Trump cannot be pardoned by a future Republican president for this particular crime. And it carries quite a hefty jail sentence. I think it's a minimum of 5 years. Sidney Powell she's been given 6 years probation.
Yeah.
I think that is right.
That'll be like a suspended sentence, I guess, won't it?
Yeah. So essentially, if she goes and steals a twist,
if she attempts another insurrection, she's in trouble.
Yeah, she's in trouble.
You can have one. We'll give you one for free. Yeah. Don't do it again.
But I did a video yesterday linking it to what's been coming out with the COVID inquiry and the Dr. Death stuff and everything else. And I was just asking that question of, are we ever going to see the people behind these terrible, terrible things that have happened in Britain over the last 13 years, austerity, Brexit, the response to COVID? Are we ever going to see them behind bars? Are we ever going to see them
for austerity now? I think for COVID, maybe. I don't hold out much hope, but I would think there is an offence, misconduct in public office, which surely has to apply. So there is potential there, not for austerity, because austerity was essentially just setting budgets.
It did kill a lot of people, though.
It did, but there was no. You'll not find any records of David Cameron going, yes, I know this will kill 200,000 people. I don't give a shit. You'll never find that record.
But we've got that
there
for
are
Boris
records
Johnson.
like that. Yeah, we've got those records for COVID. We do have those records for
will
COVID.
that translate into a criminal case?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
But
it could do.
I mean, Starmer's the best person to be prime minister if we want to.
No, because he wouldn't do anything. All he would do is make sure the National Crime Agency is funded and told, we're not going to stop you going after people. Hint, hint.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, by that I mean he's the perfect person to be PM in these circumstances because he knows the law. I mean,
Yeah, but he would have to be completely arm's length from it. It would just literally be a case of we're just going to fund, the National Crime Agency and not tell them not to investigate politicians.
do do
Off you
you
go, do your stuff.
do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know, but it's possible. It is possible. I don't waste any time really thinking about it because, I'm too much of a cynic to think it will, but it could. It won't for a lot of the things that they've done deliberately. Like as I say, austerity, no, not at all.
Brexit?
It's just that there was the looting that went on, the looting, and that's what it will be. I don't think it'll even be about the deaths as much. I think it will be about the the stealing, really.
Yeah.
Billions, tens of billions of pounds just stolen.
Yeah.
Um,
What
so I think, yeah, there is a possibility of criminal offences.
what about for the Brexit referendum?
No,
Russian meddling,
no.
Cambridge Analytica,
I'd be
stealing
very
people's data.
surprised. I'd be very surprised
I mean, no,
because that wasn't really linked to members of the government, was it? Cambridge Analytica.
no, but would we see some prosecutions against the people in Cambridge Analytica and in the
The problem
vote
is that
revote
we
campaign?
haven't really got much, have we? Because the reason Cambridge Analytica folded was specifically so that investigators couldn't come after them for their documents, for their
Hmm.
files. So I'd be very surprised.
What
I
about
mean,
Russian
America.
interference? Do you think they might run an
The
inquiry
best
into
thing they
Russian
can do about
interference?
that, no, absolutely not.
Why
That has to
not?
be quite dangerous because it's really serious. And the problem is, it would expose just how compromised we are still. I think it's one of those things you need to quietly try and deal with behind the scenes over a very long time. I think we're in too deep. I think the last thing you can do is let the public see the full extent of just how badly compromised we are, because then they'll expect you to do something, and I don't think it's a quick thing to do anything about. There are things they can do something about, like, for example, the assets of Russian oligarchs that we seized, make sure that that gets to Ukraine.
Yeah,
I think
all
Labour
those
will do
houses in
that.
Belgravia, all those
Yeah,
mansions that are
yeah.
disused.
So I definitely think there is scope there. Um, but I think, I mean, I'm not a legal expert, but I would think the richest seam has to be their behaviour over COVID, the VIP lane, um, ignoring. Because the thing is, like, you know, politicians can get expert advice and then they can still ignore it because they make the decisions, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that you can necessarily, like, if Boris Johnson, for example, he wrote on that thing that he didn't believe in long COVID. I don't think you can really prosecute him just for being thick,
Yeah.
because, like, he is the politician, he decides policy. You're always going to get a situation where you'll take expert advice and decide that you're going to, not follow it. That's fine. That's what politicians do. I think the VIP lane is not fine on any level.
No.
I think things like that are where there maybe, yes, there could be criminal investigations.
Yeah. Viv is asking, can we finally get rid of Lebedev? This is Evgeny Lebedev in the Lords. Now, this was the thing that Labour were promising. They were promising a reform of the Lords, a scrapping, an abolition of the Lords, in fact. And they've dialed back on it. And again, it's when I've spoken to Labour politicians about this, they've said the fact is it's not the thing that people are talking about on the doorstep. And also, it's going to take up a
It's
lot
actually
of
really hard.
parliamentary time
Yeah.
to do this. And we have to focus on fixing everything the Tories have broken. That's the first thing we've got to do when we get into power. And that's going to take up all the parliamentary time because the parliamentary time is limited. You only have so much time, so many things you can debate, so many bills that you can pass in a parliamentary session. And but they are going to get rid of the few life peerages, I believe, that are still there. Are they going to get rid of the Lord's spiritual?
I don't know. I'm less, like, if you're going to talk about getting rid of someone like Lebedev, I mean, maybe what you could do is say to be in the House of Lords. you have to be a full British citizen. He's not a full British citizen, surely, is he?
I don't know. He's the
Um,
Lord of Siberia.
yeah, so I imagine he's still got Russian citizenship, wouldn't you think? So maybe something like that.
He's probably got dual citizenship.
Yeah, you can maybe say it's got to be full British citizenship. You could
How
maybe
about we
do
just say
something.
that anyone put into the House of Lords by the Tories
No,
has to be
unfortunately, that might
has
look
to
a
be
little
kicked
bit
out?
party political.
Would it?
Um,
Do you think?
I think it might. So I think it's no, it's one of these problems, isn't it? If you just replace them with elected peers, it solves the whole problem. I appreciate that it's a mammoth task, and that the Lords, because they're not very happy about it, uh, would obstruct the rest of the legislation. Um, so
Okay.
it is a tricky one. I don't, but we'll just see what they do with it. At the end of the day, if they're not actually going to um, make it an elected house right now. I mean, there are people saying actually the easiest thing would be to do electoral reform of Westminster, sorry, of the House of Commons rather than the House of Lords. Like, yeah, I'd like them to do that, but it's not like a choice, is it? It's not like they're
No.
doing one, not the other. They're just doing neither at the moment. But
Yeah.
we'll just see what they do on that one.
I've been corrected in my pronunciation. There's a hard G in Evgeny, so it's not Evgeny. Sorry, I was saying it wrong. I apologize. Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on. I did a video this week about the drinking culture in Parliament, and I think this is something
Mm.
that Labour could have a look at and say, this is ridiculous that if you are in charge of a boat or in charge of a plane, you're in charge of people's lives, you're not allowed to be drunk. Whereas in Parliament, it seems like de rigueur to just go down and get absolutely hammered.
Well, it's strange, yeah.
Yeah, and not read, not read these bills that you're voting for. You're just told to vote for them by the whips, and there's so little.
Um,
Go on, sorry.
I don't think Labour are going to challenge that for two reasons. First of all, it's beneficial to any party leadership that people just do what the whips tell them. And second of all,
What bars?
there's plenty of pissheads in Labour.
Yeah, but
So
why are we subsidising the
we shouldn't be.
booze
Oh,
for
we shouldn't be subsidizing.
millionaires?
Yeah, we shouldn't be
Rishi
subsidising
Sunak doesn't drink,
anything.
but
We should not be subsidising the food and drink
why are we sub?
in the
We're,
Houses of Parliament at
we're
all.
refusing to do that for like schools.
Yeah,
I'm saying no, these kids have to
yeah.
go hungry. It's their own fault for being born not as rich as us, and then we are literally subsidising the
It
lunches
is
of
absolutely. If
incredibly
I was
rich
an
people.
MP, I would refuse to buy any food or drink. I would take my own like sandwiches and drinks in
Yeah.
rather than get subsidised food because I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Did you see the interview this week on joe.co.uk with um uh the Rory Stewart? Rory Stewart. Did you see that?
Not
Did you
with
hear that?
Rory Stewart, no.
It was really interesting. He was talking about how much of a con the whole being an MP thing is, and the fact that they don't read the bills and they don't,
Well,
they
we
just do
know
what they're
that.
told, and sometimes they don't even know what they're voting on. They just go and vote on it. And
Yeah,
he
they
was
almost never know what they're voting on. But that's how the system works
yes, I know,
because
but
that's the party system.
he was talking about reforms in things like sort of having these hyper localized councils and things like that, which allow people to um, basically vote on very, very local matters, which we don't really have at the moment. We're seeing a bit more devolution, obviously, with the metro mayors around England and
Mm.
also in Scotland and Northern Ireland, if the Assembly ever wants to assemble, and in Wales. But yeah, as far as democracy is concerned, it is a bit concerning that nearly everyone who goes, well, especially on the Tory side, goes through that same sort of public school, Oxbridge, usually Oxford actually,
Yeah,
screw Cambridge. It's a dump. And then go into either being a lawyer or being a newspaper hack, and then they go into politics. And it seems to be a bit of a conveyor belt. And there's a lot of us sort of
yes.
looking at that from the outside, saying, "Well, I'm never going to be a politician because I don't have that background."
And it's a problem having that background. I keep thinking because it just generates groupthink where because they've all got the same background, they think in the same way. And therefore they act as their own echo chamber, just piling the confirmation bias on. And they're not really critical of what they're doing. I mean, that's part of the problem they've got now. And you get the same thing in Labour. towards the end of Labour's time after the banking crisis, and obviously Labour were really up against it to win the following election. And instead of like pulling together, they just sort of seem to like do what the Tories are doing now, but on a much lower level, which is to like form into factions again.
Yeah.
And but that's what the Tories are doing now. It's because they don't really. It should be really simple for a politician. What do we need to do to an election? It's really simple. Listen to voters. Like, even if you don't give them what you want because you think it's a stupid thing or just because you're really corrupt, then you at least need to give the impression that you are listening to them and responding to them. And the Tories aren't. I mean, when they say things like, oh, we got this absolute hammering in the election, much worse than they thought was going to happen, that is a sign we have to carry on doing what we're doing. It's like, even if you're going to do it, you cannot say that.
Yeah.
Can't say that because it won't work. And as I say, they've got more against them this time. I mean, there's really, these by-elections show there were 4 factors evident with with both of them that contribute to this. The obvious one is the fact that the Conservatives are getting everything wrong. They're just getting everything wrong. They're saying, oh, our voters didn't turn out. Why do you think that is? What reason have you given your voters to turn out? You haven't given them a reason. You're ignoring them. But then there's others as well. The other one is tactical voting, clear evidence of tactical voting. The Green vote, was down in both of them. The Lib Dem vote was down in Tamworth. Obviously, it was up in Mid Bedfordshire. But then that leads on to the third factor, which is in Mid Bedfordshire, the Lib Dems were targeting Conservative areas that will never vote Labour, but they might vote Lib Dem. And that all helped Labour by bringing the Conservative vote down.
Yeah.
And then your fourth factor was Reform UK. Reform UK got their deposit back in Tamworth, and they got like 3.7% in Mid Bedfordshire. But either way, they were getting, what was it, about it was close to 1,500 votes. And in an election where it came down to less than 1,500 votes, that's, it shows that Reform UK, if they do stand candidates against the Conservatives this time, which they say they will, but they said that last time. But if they do, that's a that'll make the difference in a lot of seats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone actually said in the comments on my videos today, should Keir Starmer thank Reform UK? I said, well, no, but he should definitely hope they stand.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they are very good at splitting the Tory vote, giving disaffected Tories someone else to vote for rather than. And the big thing here is that Labour are not the boogeyman that they once were.
No.
The people are not genuinely scared of a Labour government like they were 4 years ago, and that is huge. That is a big step in the right direction. And although Starmer's policies, they're not necessarily ones that I'm screaming from the rooftops, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And Starmer himself, like I say, he's not particularly charismatic. He doesn't really have a personality cult around him, but I'm quite enjoying that because people with personality cults around them, like Trump, like Corbyn, like Johnson, like Farage, like Lawrence Fox and Russell frickin' Brand, they just don't seem to have this ability to, live in the real world. Maybe they shouldn't surround themselves with
too many
going,
people.
You're amazing.
Exactly.
Everything you say is amazing.
They've basically got yes men around them all the time.
Yeah. Star Wars Episode 1.
Pay them.
Star Wars Episode 1, the biggest independent film ever made. George Lucas ran every part of that. He signed off on everything, and it was full of these 20-something Star Wars fans who had grown up on Star Wars, and no one wanted to say no to him. No one wanted to say, that's crap, George. That's a terrible idea. No, don't do that. That's not how you tell a story. You don't want to drive talking amphibian in this who steps in poo. That's not something that should happen in a Star Wars movie.
No. It's a shame, actually, because the opening sequence was amazing.
In Star Wars Episode 1?
Yeah, it was superb. Because what had happened was, you had the 4, 5, and 6, where the Jedi were being openly ridiculed because they'd been basically wiped out. So but then it went back to that time when they were a major force and people crapped themselves. So you had this scene where you got these Jedi there, and then there's that lieutenant on the bridge crapping himself because there's 2 Jedi on the way, and there's his superiors going, "What you're on about? It's just like 2 people in it," and it was absolutely superb. Right up until they went down and found Jar Jar Binks?
Well, I wouldn't have started it that way. I would have started it with a big epic space battle.
No,
Um,
putting the focus on what it was like when the Jedi were feared and respected.
well,
That was it.
yeah, I would have
But it
started
went
it with a
downhill
space
after that.
battle, and then had a Sith and a Jedi fight on the, once the
Well,
baddie
you
ship
need
had
to
been
play
pulled in by the
Star Wars: The
tractor
Old
beam.
Republic because that's what happens there.
Oh, good, good. I need to play that more. I was a big fan of Jedi Knight and Dark
Yes, I
Forces. Was
was.
it
Yeah,
Dark Forces?
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I had those from yeah.
that was fantastic. There was a level where the ship was falling, and you were in a ship, and
Yes, I remember
gravity was
that.
going
Yeah,
upside down, and you had like 45 seconds to find the
yeah.
escape hatch or something.
Mm.
Absolutely fantastic for 1997 or whenever it came out. Oh god, that was 25 years ago. Anyway, thank you very much to One Angry Pagan for the £10 super chat. Fellow socialists must think more pragmatically. We have to think mid long term thinking to convince the centralist public that our ideas will be better for us all as a planet. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, what Labour needed was a big dose of practicality, and that's what Starmer's delivered. And as you've said before in the past, Phil, like Starmer's got one job, and that's to win the election.
Mm. In government, he's got many jobs, but at the moment, it's just to win the election. That is it.
Yeah, yeah. People are saying in the chat, "Oh God, you've gone down the Star Wars rabbit hole," and then Dark Forces games are awesome. Cal Katan, was it Cal Katan? Ah, love them.
Can't remember.
It
So
was
long
it
ago.
was it was like Doom, but Star Wars. So the X-wing games, I can't agree more.
See,
They,
I don't like
do you not
the
like
sort
those
of
old
those ones, the
space
spaceship
stimulant?
ones.
Oh, they were
Not keen on
brilliant.
that. So only
And they
keen
taught
on
me the
like.
Greek alphabet because all the TIE fighters used to have Greek letters as their call
Oh, see,
signs.
I learned Greek alphabet because I was into astronomy when I was young. And one day I just sat down and thought, because obviously you're looking, and they've all got the Greek letters in front of the names. And I just thought, okay, squiggly line, what's that? Okay, right. So then I just said, right, I'm just going to learn it. I just sat down one afternoon and just looked at it and learned it.
I was actually gutted this week because there was an annular eclipse of the sun, which is when you have the ring
Mm.
around the ring of light around the moon, when you have the solar eclipse, and it went literally over my island in Panama. If I
All
had
right, yeah,
been in Panama, I could have
yeah.
sat back on my island and looked at
There are
my
some people that go on
special glasses.
holidays specifically just to follow
Yeah, I
eclipses.
want to do that sometime. I've never seen a real eclipse. I've always
Have you
been in the
not? There
wrong
was one near
place.
my country a few years ago.
I know, but I probably wasn't in the country. I always
All right.
seem to miss them. And then it's
Mm.
like, oh, there's not going to be one like
You
that
do
for another
get quite a
20
lot of
years.
warning.
And I'm
There's
like,
quite a
oh,
lot of warning about them.
I know. Close to God, I was in Egypt once in 1999 when there was an eclipse and it didn't quite cover the sun in Egypt from the angle that I was at. But,
Actually, just to slightly derail it again, someone's mentioned Babylon 5.
oh,
What they should do with Babylon 5, because I loved it as well, what they should
fantastic
do
show.
with it is because let's be honest, the Amiga graphics on the space scenes are shy. What's to stop them updating those and re-releasing it? They'll make money on it, won't they? Because that's easy. Everything involving the people in the studios was fine. It's just the space scenes, which is shite.
I
They
I
might as well have got a cartoonist to do them.
yeah,
So why don't they just update them
but
and re-release it?
my problem with Babylon 5 is it was absolutely fantastic compulsive viewing up until season 4 episode 6 when they
Well,
basically confronted the Vorlons and the Shadows and they
what
went go home and they went okay then and they
well, what
left
they had to
and I was like
do,
what I thought there was going to be a big
the problem was that there was always
what happened to the
supposed to be
battle
5 seasons, but
yeah
then it looked like there might not be the 5th season, so they had to hastily get the story out in the 4th. So I haven't actually ever watched the 5th, even though in
no
theory
I
I
didn't
have
watch the
it.
5th either
Because what was the point once the story was done?
yeah there
I
was a
wasn't
virus they
because
had
I
to stop
wasn't
a
interested
virus
in because there was an element of Babylon 5 which was a little bit like EastEnders in space, a bit like Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm not interested in the soap opera stuff. I was just interested in the story. Um, but that was the issue there. It was a bit like rushed in 4 because they didn't know that they were going to get a 5th.
yeah but they should have ended it at the last episode that should have been the big
Well,
denouement, and the denouement shouldn't have been. Listen, guys, you've been here since the birth of the universe, and you're not very nice, and you keep fighting each other. So why don't you go to another universe? And they go, okay then. It was a bit Doctor Who. One of the things that annoys me in Doctor Who is that at the end of a lot of episodes, there's a button to press or a lever to pull, and it gets rid of all the bad guys. And it's like, that was convenient. Oh, I'll just pull this lever and all the Daleks go away.
I think you must be thinking of like the newer Doctor Who's.
No, that happened in
No,
the old Doctor Who's when they
No.
in the Peter Cushing. Was it Peter Cushing who played him in the
No,
movies?
that was the films. That wasn't proper.
Yeah, and they just literally the
that was
Daleks.
just a silly film.
The Daleks had these metal. We're losing so many viewers talking about this. The Daleks used to have these metal ramps that they trundle along, and they unplugged the metal ramps, and the Daleks powered down because that's where they got the power from.
No, that wasn't the proper Doctor Who. The proper Doctor Who, they were much more sensible about it. Admittedly, they did knacker one with a plastic sheet, but that was actually quite clever.
Johnny Cophead is throwing money at us, going Firefly, Firefly. So Firefly was very, very, very good. That was Joss Whedon's series after Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it only ran for one season, and then they had a movie called Serenity, which is also very good. And it also featured what's her name, Marina Baccarin, who played Deadpool's girlfriend in the Deadpool movies, and she's gorgeous.
We're gonna have to bring this back to politics. I'm just seeing here.
Are we?
Danny Kruger is saying, we need to go
Kruger's
further and faster on migration and the culture wars. Yeah. So the stuff that you've been 100% focused on that hasn't worked, we need to focus on this.
More of that.
More of the stuff you're already focusing on that isn't working on any level. It's not working in terms of policy, and it's not working in terms of cut through. More of the stuff that's not working. This is why they're doomed. Because at the moment, like to begin with, I was trying to work out how many Tory MPs, and I can't work it out, but how many Tory MPs are just deluded and think that all these voters are going to crawl out the woodwork come election day and it'll be fine. How many recognize there's a real problem? But even of the ones that recognize there's a real problem, there's some of them going, they're just again going into their little cliques and trying to work out how they can push that faction's main pet policies. And it's like, none of them are thinking to themselves, should we ask voters what they want us to do? Because we're clearly not doing it. I haven't seen
There's no appetite for an
that.
election. There's no appetite for a general election. That's what Rishi Sunak said during the conference when he was asked about, like, so you're going to have an election? Oh, there's no appetite for it. And they're 20 points ahead behind in the polls.
I've just seen, like, I haven't seen a single Tory MP just say, shall we ask voters what we're doing wrong? Because we're obviously missing that message. Not one of them has said, not even a backbencher.
Oh, come on, it's their jobs. It's their jobs. That's all they care about. Maggie Pye, thank you very much for the super chat. I didn't miss it. She said, if the Tory party go under, may they rest in peep. And we got the chat has sort of descended into people talking about Stargate, SG-1, and Firefly, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So we're getting it all in now. This is what happens when we go off on a bit of a tangent, which is something that I tried to reserve for the Labour Social at 9:00 tonight. Are you going to be joining us for the Labour Social?
Yeah, I'm about tonight, yes.
Okay, we're going to have a few drinks, celebratory drinks. I'm trying to get Ben Chambers to come round to my gaff here in Durham, but it just depends on how the storm gets on because he goes everywhere on his motorbike. So it might be a bit difficult for him.
That won't be very pleasant.
It might be difficult for him. It's about 20 minutes away he lives, so it's not too bad, but it is country roads, country lanes, which may well be flooded. Dai Thai says, I personally, I love the sci-fi diversion. It's all good. So we're not going to start going off on one about Star Trek versus Star Wars because
Star Trek's shite.
Oh, that's fighting. So everyone's going to withdraw their super chats now. It's going to be like, how do I get a refund? How do I get a refund? I like them both. Is that allowed? Am I allowed?
You can like them both if you want to, spend time watching a show where they think it's a good idea to have their flagship have one fixed gun at the front in space, and then have all the most important crew in the top of the ship, separated from that space by a little glass dome.
Well, it's not supposed to be a war vessel, is it? It's supposed to be an
Yes.
exploration vessel, like the
It's the
HMS Beagle.
flagship, for goodness sake.
Yeah, but it's not.
And because it's an exploration vessel, it gets into a lot of trouble.
Graham in the chat is trying to bring it back to politics. We are going to wrap up in a minute, though. Election results like this. Were there any by-election results like this before 92 or 97?
So
Yes, very much so. Go on, Phil.
in general like this, but these are sort of better than those ones that were happening then. At least one of them, I can't remember if it was the Tamworth one, I think it might have been Mid Bedfordshire, but one of them has achieved the second biggest swing to Labour ever in like post-war years.
Wow.
So, but in terms of the swings here, because look at the swings we've had in terms of massive swings. So we've had Selby and Ainsty. We've had Rutherglen and Hamilton West. We can easily forget about that because that was not a swing away from the Conservatives, but it's still a big swing to Labour. Now, part of this, admittedly, is because Labour were in such a hole in 2019, but nonetheless, and then huge swings in Tamworth and Mid Bedfordshire. So these are bigger than the swings that Labour were getting in like 95 to 97 in their by-elections. But as I say, part of that will be because Labour were in a much bigger hole ahead of this election than they were after 92. But at the same time, it's like, if you project it, it's still on for 1997 levels of Labour victory, but from much further back.
Yeah.
So what we are going to see at the next election is a record number of gain of seats for Labour, like complete record.
It's going to be epic.
Or of any party. No party will have. Labour are going to gain more seats
drunk, Phil.
in one election.
I'm not going to sober up for decades. I got a message from Ellis Garner asking me to say "Dick, quick" in a broad Liverpool accent. I've got no idea why they want me to do that, but there you go. They've done that. One Angry Pagan, £2 super chat. Thank you very much. My shield at your backs, guys, and yours. And also, someone's mentioned Blake Seven, which is always worth a mention.
Yeah.
I met the guy who played Avon in Blake Seven. He was very nice.
Right.
And Business Cat makes a very good point, Phil. In Return of the Jedi, a single fighter took out the bridge of a Super Star Destroyer.
In what?
In Return of the Jedi, a single fighter takes out the bridge of a Super Star Destroyer.
Yeah, but they were the bad guys. They're allowed to be idiots. Right. In Star Trek, we're talking about the good guys.
Okay. Yeah, that was good. That was you got out of that one very well. You should be a politician, Phil.
Yeah.
Why did you lose this election? Oh, it's because we weren't. Those really unpopular policies that we've got. We need to be doing them harder.
There's so many bad takes coming out now. Here's another one. None of these MPs have been named. Paul Brand of ITV saying, latest take from a Conservative MP. The by-elections were partly lost because the government might ban conversion therapy, because that's back on now. They were going, we're going to ban it. We're going to ban it. It's terrible practice, which is. And then it was like, oh, sorry, we've run out of time. We won't be able to ban it after all. Now it's like, we think we might be able to ban it in the next session. Oh, that's why we lost the by-elections.
Oh, yeah.
Even though they only just announced that. And the polls have been saying you're going to be losing them all day long for like a month.
And more like to point out that Angela Rayner made it very, very clear that in the first term of a Labour government, they will be banning conversion therapy across the board.
It's completely uncontroversial. Like in France, they banned it and no one raised an eyebrow. And like if the government does anything that anyone doesn't like in France, they set fire to Paris. So it's completely uncontroversial. In like
smear the side of the palace. What's it called? The Versailles Palace of Versailles. With horse manure. Take this, you tops. We don't do that kind of thing over here. We're far too reserved. Maggie Pice, thank you very much for the super chat. Many Brexiteer Tory MPs remind me of stormtroopers. Yeah, they're just as stupid and just as likely to knock their head on the top of the door frame. Sorry, what were you about to say, Phil?
That was only one of them. The stormtroopers are very good. All this stuff about stormtroopers can't hit the broadside of a barn. They were told to miss to let them get away because they had the tracking device on the Millennium Falcon. The stormtroopers have been much maligned for many years.
They're told
it's not
to
like
miss.
George Lucas wrote a complex story, is it? Let's be honest. But yeah, people keep falling for it.
Anyway, we can talk about this more later. We'll be back at 9 o'clock. We're going to be joined tonight by Wayne and Basildon and Josh from Movement Forward, amongst others. Supertansky might be putting in an appearance. We don't know yet, but that would be great to see her as well. So please join us for the Labour Social at 9 o'clock tonight. We'll be kicking back, having a lager or a wine, I guess, or a whiskey, whatever's your poison, or a cup of tea, or some Vimto. Phil, maybe get the Vimto out.
I might get some wine out. Who knows?
Oh, okay. And we'll be celebrating Labour's stonking wins in mid Bedfordshire and in Tamworth, which is pretty cool, and heralds, furthermore, the demise of the Tory party as we know it, which is fantastic news, because at the Tory party at this moment in time is the worst possible Tory party it's ever been, and it's always been bad.
And it could get worse if they were allowed back in.
Yeah, exactly.
So Labour should be over 200 MPs now, actually, after this. That'd be good.
Another 200, you mean?
No, I mean, as in with these two new MPs.
Oh, right. I was going to say in the
they're
election,
on 199. No, they're on 199 at the moment. I mean, that's how badly they're beaten down.
So they're going to be on 201 now.
They would be on 201.
And
but that's fine. They'll be on 203.
Yeah,
from
Wellingborough and Blackpool South. And in January, you reckon January for that?
January, it could be February. I suppose it depends, because I mean, like, I don't know how quickly these suspensions will be or will kick in, and then it's like recall petition. But it might be that one or both of them resigns rather than go through the recall. Who knows? But the recall petition lasts 6 weeks, so we'll just have to see how that works out. But by February, we should have 2 more Labour MPs.
Fantastic. Well, we'll see. Go on. Sorry,
I was just going to say, we don't actually know who's going to be the Conservative leader who goes into those by-elections at the moment. You would think Rishi Sunak still, because it would be a bit bonkers to replace him, but you never know exactly.
You never know. Okay, thank you very, very much for watching. Thanks for all the super chat. Just to say that One Angry Pagan was saying Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings all the way. I'm sorry, mate, but I like them both, and that's acceptable, okay? You are allowed to like 2 things at once. It's not a zero-sum game. As a huge Lord of the Rings and Star Wars nerd over here. Anyway, so thanks very much, Phil, for joining us in this episode of The Agenda. Quite a jubilant episode. And thank you so much for all the super chats. Really, really appreciate it. We'll be back at 9 o'clock tonight. Hope to see you there. And until then, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.